Good morning and welcome everybody to this conversation on Georgia. When I planned this event with my new Georgian colleague, Iana, we thought the political crisis may not be resolved by today. So it was excellent news that finally common sense prevailed. The political deadlock that has been dragging on for months was broken, with the deal put forward by the EU, Charles Michel and Mr. Danielson, with crucial support from the US Ambassador to Georgia, Kelly Dagan. I think Charles Michel is even traveling to Georgia next week to celebrate this EU foreign policy success story. And unfortunately, we don't see too many EU foreign policy success stories. So this is really a fabulous occasion to celebrate something. So today we are going to be having a conversation on the new situation, what we can expect next, and steps towards implementing this agreement that was just signed on. Also looking at issues linked to this. I mean, for example, the prospects for snap elections, as well as the central role that the EU has been playing and will continue to play, and how it can impact Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration processes, NATO and the EU. So I'm really pleased to have two excellent guests with me this morning. First of all, from Tbilisi, Kornely Kakachia, Director of the Georgian Institute of Politics. Welcome to you, Kornely. It's really nice to see you again in the EPC. And secondly, Marina Kaljurand, MEP from the group of the Progressive Alliance of Social Democrats, and who is chair of the Delegation for Relations with the South Caucasus, which certainly must keep her very busy, given all the dramatic events that all seem to be rolling out in the region. Welcome to you, Marina. We have 45 minutes for this session, so quite short. I'm going to begin by putting some questions to our speakers. I would like to ask you, the audience, to already start to put forward your questions into the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of the screen, right from the beginning. So that will allow me to start asking those questions actually throughout the Q&A I'm doing with the guests, because I'm sure there's going to be some, commonalities there. So I would like to start with you, Kornely, by asking you, please, can you give us first of all an update on the new situation in Georgia, and what does it mean?
Thank you, Amanda, for inviting me for this discussion. As you already mentioned, I think we had a quite good week last week, and which ended up with good results. So finally, the Georgian opposition and government kind of agreed through the mediation of EU to set up this outstanding issue regarding post-election situation in Georgia. So I think that and most of the major political parties, they agreed. There are some political parties who are reluctant yet, but we will see how that will evolve. But mostly the major political parties, I think they took responsibility and they signing for this agreement, as well as government. So I think this was something which was not really expected a few months ago, but through active mediation of EU and including European Parliament and some other, like US Embassy, as you mentioned, it became, the fact. But there's still some challenges because, as we said, this may be the first step towards agreement, but there's still a lot of problems. One of them is this extreme polarization of Georgian politics, which is still the biggest issue. So that's why what we need is, after this agreement, I think we still need engagement with the Georgian political parties, especially through Jean Monnet dialogue, which European Parliament actually offered the last statement of MEPs. And I'm sure Ms. Marina will talk about this later, because this is what we need, because what Georgia right now needs is institutionalization of the political parties and the politics in general. And the good thing is that now, at least, we moved from the strict politics. Now political parties moving to the parliament, which is a very good start. But as I said, we still need to work on that. And there's also several unresolved issues related to the prisoners, also some technical issues related to election, because as you probably know, this local election, which is set up for fall, now became more important than it is normally, because local elections in Georgia, and they're not so popular normally, but because of this now new agreement, according to which the ruling party agreed that they have to garner 43% of the support. And if they cannot make it, then we will have a snap election next year. So it makes this election really very important for Georgian and for Georgian political parties. So we will see how this will develop in few days.
Thank you, Kornely. Maybe I can just ask you a quick add-on question. I mean, the UNM refused to endorse the agreement. So how do you think that they can be brought on board? And what is the role of, Misha Saakashvili still, from the outside looking in the decisions of the UNM in this respect?
Yeah, it's a very complicated question, because as I see it, I was trying to follow yesterday this conversation with UNM, and I think that there's a split of opinion inside the party. There are some MPs, some members of parliament who actually signed that, and there are some rift inside the party about this issue. So, but I think sooner or later, I hope that pragmatism will prevail, and there might be some people inside the party who may not like this idea, especially if there's some outstanding issue in this agreement, which they need to probably to get a little bit more information. But I think it will be really a waste of time, and a really unfortunate case if major opposition political party will not be joining this. And I believe that this will be the case, because that's at least how we're reading this situation. Of course, there might be some other, some individuals who may not be happy with this result, but that's what we have right now. And I think that most important thing for UNM is that if this is a good, this may not be the best, how to say, solution for how they see the solution of this problem. But we should not forget that this agreement was based on compromise, so it doesn't fit, probably for to GD as well, to UNM, but this was the best kind of scenario what the European mediation could offer. So to be realistic, I think it's also interest of UNM to mobilize their voters, because the election will be very soon. So I think we need to move a little bit towards more institutionalized frameworks, and I think that's the probably interest of the UNM and their voters as well.
Okay, thank you, Kornely. Now I'd like to come to the role of the EU and to you, Marina. Can you sort of give us an assessment of how important the role of the EU has been in this process? I mean, you yourself, along with some other MEPs, have played a very important role, sending a very strong message to the Georgian parties, underlining that they needed to get that act together, or it wouldn't be business as usual if they hadn't reached this agreement. It seems to have had an important impact. Does this really underline the important role and influence that the EU has in Georgia?
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Kornely. And it's a pleasure to be on, together with you discussing Georgia today. And as you, Amanda, very rightly said at the very beginning, today we're talking in a completely new situation, which has changed in the recent days. And as a matter of fact, Charles Michel is already in Tbilisi. So he's not traveling next week. He's already there, and he's having meetings with the leadership of the country, with president, prime minister, speaker. So he is there, and I think the fact he's there and he's saying signing document is not enough. The second stage is implementation, and implementation is crucial. Implementation is important, and as a matter of fact, we can't talk about, let's say, the full end or a complete end to the crisis until the compromise agreement is being signed and implemented. Now, as to the role of the EU, well, it's the highest level of involvement we have seen. It's Council President Michel asking his personal envoy to mediate the political situation in Georgia. Now, as a matter of fact, what higher can you ask for? Involvement of all EU institutions, Commission, External Action Services, and European Parliament. Yes, I'm really proud about the role that the European Parliament has played. I think that in the European Parliament, we were able to put our party interests below the wider interests. So maybe the letter signed by 7 MEPs from different political families of the European Parliament was a clear signal that it is the understanding of the European Parliament that Georgian political leaders should come to a compromise proposed by Ambassador Danielson is a good compromise, and you have to end this deadlock because Georgia has much more important questions on the table, on the agenda, judicial reform, electoral reform, EU aspirations, fighting pandemic, tackling economic recovery, vaccination. These are the topics that Georgian government, Georgian parliament have to tackle. And parliament can't be workable, can't be democratic if it does not include opposition. Opposition has to be there, opposition has to be vocal, opposition has to work in the parliament exactly the way how Georgian people mandated politicians during the parliamentary elections in October. So I wouldn't say that it's a new normality today, but I would rather say that Georgia is back where it was before the political crisis. Georgia can pay more attention and tackle the questions that are most important to the country. And I'm really happy that our partnership, EU-Georgian partnership, will go to the same path as it was and will now have much more possibilities for closer improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. And just staying on this issue of implementation, what do you see as the most, let's say, tricky or difficult areas, perhaps, in terms of getting the agreement implemented? And what will be the tools that the EU will be continuing to use in this implementation process?
I'm not going into the details. I'm a member of the European Parliament, and I don't want to go into the details of implementation. As I said, the mediation was done by Ambassador Danielson, and I hope to come to the compromise. It was a big thing to all political parties. You can have a compromise if you give up something. You can't have a compromise if only one side wins and the other side has to give in. So it was an important step. And a couple of weeks ago, when we issued our statement, we also said that we see the responsibility to take the first step lies with Georgian Dream, the party in government, the ruling party. We were looking towards them. They did the first step. And now it's the time of opposition to do their steps. And as much as I know, there are members of UNM who have already signed. There are members of other opposition parties who have signed the document, who will enter the parliament. So the parliament now has the constitutional majority. Parliament is workable. That's important thing. Implementation, of course, EU will continue seeing the implementation so that the promises on judicial reform, electoral reform, on prisoners and all the other promises that were made on paper will be fulfilled, because I just don't see that the situation will be solved if the real steps in real life will not follow this political document. So it's important to implement. And as I said at the very beginning, that is one of the reasons why Charles Michel, I think now he already left, was in Tbilisi, and why it was so important for him to meet the leadership and to underline the importance of implementation.
Thank you. And it's good to know that Mr. Michel is in Tbilisi today. So I apologize for getting my dates mixed up. It's great that he went there so quickly. So Kornely, I'll ask you the same question about implementation, because obviously, implementation is key here. It's one thing, signing on the dotted line. It's another thing implementing. Where do you think are going to be the most difficult areas among this set of issues?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. Actually, there's some issue which needs, to be resolved soon than later, and one of them is the issue related to the prisoners, and this is a little bit tricky issue, which also involves, ruling parties. So we need here some sort of how to say, out-of-box solutions because there are some principles and opposition still stick on this principle. So we have to make some sort of how to say, face-saving solution regarding this issue. I don't know what will be and how that will be, but I'm sure that through EU mediation, this will be this kind of solution will be found. The second issue, biggest issue, is that how to reform the Central Election Committee, the ESS, basically. Because as you know, we will have an election very soon. As I said, it's very important this time, this local election, because it's tied up now with this idea of the snap election. So it means that Georgian government, together with opposition political parties and civil society, have to start to think how to reform the Central Election Commission, and that's a huge work. And I don't know how fast we can move on that direction. Of course, there are some other issues. There are also some other parts of this agreement, but I think that these are the, I would say, most important one, which somehow worries the the Georgian voters right now.
Amanda, you're muted.
Sorry, that's moderator muting herself is not a great thing. I would just like to come to the issue of the snap elections. How do you see the possible result of these elections in terms of the political landscape in Georgia, and what's the possibility here that that the Russian influence into the country could impact the outcome here? I mean, how has Russia been looking at this, crisis? I guess Russia was looking at it, in a positive way, and is probably, very unhappy that this agreement has come. So, what could be the impact on these elections?
Yeah, I think first of all, before the election, a lot of things also depend how the parties will implement this agreement, especially this power sharing, because according what the sides actually agreed, that there should be power sharing in the parliament between opposition and Georgian Dream in order to have some balance in parliamentary work. And of course, this matters. But as far as the election in Russia, I think, Russia was not really probably expecting so much involvement from EU on Georgia, because Georgia is kind of seen like marginal state in EAP, who has some, from Russian perspective, who has some sort of, how to say, unclear ambitions about to joining the European Union. So there was a lot of attempt from Russian propaganda, basically last several years, to convince the Georgians, especially those Georgians who are not really still embroiled who are still not clear about the European aspirations of Georgia, that Georgia doesn't belong to Europe, and Europe doesn't care about Georgia or Ukraine, and these countries are just have an illusion about their European future. And it's high time to come to the senses and to talk to Moscow and to agree on the solutions of the territorial problems on the terms actually that Moscow is proposing. So I think from that perspective, what Moscow was offering, I think this EU activity in Georgia was not really fitting the Russian foreign policy agenda well. And I think that that's a huge victory for EU in the neighborhood, and of course it's a huge victory for Georgia itself, who is always who is always in a very how to say, difficult position, especially after last year, after this conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, when Georgia actually felt a little bit isolated from the region because, as you know, there was not so much involvement from neither from EU, neither from United States. So, and Georgia is considered to be the partner of the West in the region. So that's why this initiative from EU and EU involvement in the solution of the Georgian crisis was it had even geopolitical significance. So that's why I think this is also signal to the Moscow that there might be it might be true that EU doesn't have right now the clear vision about the future of this region. I'm talking here about Eastern Partnership, but at least EU is trying to not abandon the countries who want to integrate more with Europe, with countries like Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, and like this associated trio. I think this is a really very important news for the region.
Thank you, Kornely. Marina, I think that, I've heard a lot of criticism in the past that the EU doesn't have, a real strategy or a real policy for the South Caucasus, and that the region isn't important. But I think, this development has shown that the region is important for the EU. And the fact that they've put so much political investment into resolving the situation in Georgia, I think underlines this. Do you think this could be, a first step for perhaps the EU developing a more, let's say, comprehensive strategy for the rest of the region? Because, I mean, you could say that Georgia is the easiest country in the South Caucasus. The other two have a lot of challenges that are, security orientated as well. So do you see this as a possible opening for a larger focus on the bigger region?
Thank you, Amanda. Well, I do not completely agree that EU has not paid enough attention to the region. I'm a very strong supporter of Eastern Partnership policy. I do think that the Eastern Partnership policy has been successful. Yes, recent year has been difficult in almost all Eastern Partnership countries. And today, as we talk, we just came to the end of the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly meeting we had for 2 days in Brussels, where we met with the parliamentarians of all Eastern Partnership countries. And the feeling that I got from that meeting was each and every Eastern Partnership country wants to have closer ties with EU. Yes, they're different. Their reforms are different. Their interests are different. But what EU can do, EU can offer closer partnership on the terms that the partner country wants and accepts. We can't do more than the partner country wants to do. So I think that this very individual approach to specific EU Eastern Partnership countries is the right one. Whether we called it 3 or whether we called it 3+3, for me, that's not important. The important thing is that we listen to partners and we cooperate with them, and we provide options, we provide perspective. And Amanda, if I may, I'll just jump back to the question you posed to Kornely about Russia's impact and information operations. It reminds very much my country. After Estonia regained independence in 1991, we have been under Russian information influence since then, and all the same things were said about Estonia. Small Nazi country, hates Russia, not suitable for NATO, will only create problems in the EU. Nobody wants you there. It was exactly what we were hearing then for years and years and years. So for Georgia, I think you have crossed already. Georgia has already crossed the line. There is no way back. I hope so. I very much hope so. Integration with Europe is the Georgian choice. From the European Parliament side, Again, I'm a strong believer and strong supporter of open doors policies. Each and every nation should have the right to decide what their future should be, to which organizations or alliances they should belong to. I'm a strong supporter of that, but we have to be realistic. Georgia needs reforms. And I think it's also important to understand that the reforms, electoral reform, judicial reform, as one of the most important ones, the country is not doing for EU. The country is doing it for the country's people. And to have that swift switch in thinking is crucial. I think we won more support to EU when we were able to explain to our people. We are not doing it because somebody from Brussels demands. We are doing it because we want to be democratic, because it's good for our people, because that's the future we should be looking for. So sometimes EU is not so good in exposing what EU is doing. Russians are sometimes much better, being it vaccination or being a vaccination diplomacy, whatever. So we have to be in the EU smarter, more flexible, quicker, and we have to learn how to expose the good things we are doing and how to gain more support from the Eastern Partnership countries to the EU, not specifically Georgia, because Georgians are strong supporters of EU integration and transatlantic ties, but maybe more to the other Eastern Partnership countries. Okay, Ukraine is also very supportive of the EU, but let's say then others.
Thank you. And just a follow-on question. I mean, I totally agree with what you said about how it's up to Georgia, first and foremost, to push forward with the reform process. And, you know, I think Georgia has always been a very good example in the region, but obviously because the society is so supportive of this Euro-Atlantic integration process, it would be impossible, at least for the time being, for any party to come to power who wasn't supporting this road. But do you think, you know, the transformation that Georgia is making, the fact that they've shown, you know, strength in democracy by, you know, taking the decision that they did to sign this agreement, is going to help them on their path to eventually becoming an EU member state? Do you believe that this is still, you know, a realistic goal for Georgia to have, given the fact that, you know, the EU today is not exactly looking for new members?
It's a very good question, and it's a very difficult question, because enlargement, it's a consensus question in the EU. And if you look at the positions of different EU member states, I do not see there much appetite for enlargement towards East. Yes, maybe to some countries in Balkans, but at the moment there is just not enough political consensus and political will in the EU for Eastern enlargement. To be very open and honest, there are still some voices in the EU that think that the enlargement, when, for example, my country acceded to EU in 2004, was too many, too quickly. We are still having we still have some problems, I don't know, in Romania, Bulgaria. We still have problems in the countries that are already member states and do not always maybe fulfill all the obligations they were expected to. So there is, I do not see political will for membership at the moment. But yes, even if you look at the fact, EU at the moment is not even ready to repeat the European perspective. And that's really embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. But because the countries, they should have the perspective, if not in the short term, then in some term. So yes, at the moment difficult, but doesn't mean that Georgia should stop. Again, I'll come back to my country. 91, nobody believed that Estonia can be NATO ally. Nobody. But we were doing our reforms, we were doing our work, just waiting for the window of opportunity. And we had the window of opportunity, and we were able to join both NATO and EU. So my advice to all Eastern Partnership countries is the same. Just do your reforms, do your homework, and wait for the window, political window of opportunity, so that once the window of opportunity comes, you will not lose it. You will take advantage of it and you get the best for a country. The window, it will come. I don't know when, it will come. Important thing is to be prepared then, to grab it and not to let it go.
Thank you. I would like to put the same question more or less to you, Kornely. Do you think that Georgia, and the Georgian population really has a staying power to wait and wait and wait, maybe for a very long time, or is there no other option? And I would link to that a question that we have here from Christine Higa, who's asking, what are Georgia's challenges to get ready for its EU membership application in 2024? I mean, that's not very far off, is it? A couple of years goes quite quickly. So I'll give the floor to you, Kornely.
Thank you. Yes, I think I agree with what was already said, that when we're talking about Georgia's EU aspiration, this is something where we have actually national consensus. And as you know, more than 80% of Georgian population support this idea. Of course, there is an issue which we need to solve. This is how to manage the expectation. It's not only about the EU, but also about NATO membership. Because as you know, at the moment, this is not in the cards. So that's why the Georgian political class, together with civil society, academia, media, actually need to think how to formulate these issues in order not to have, I would say, some sort of fatigue among the ordinary Georgians. Because as you remember, there was some time when Georgian political leaders, they raised the expectations, and this was not really helpful, especially if you raise the expectation that today or tomorrow you become member of EU or NATO, and then it didn't go through. So we have to be very realistic, but at the same time, we need also, as Ms. Kaljurand mentioned, we need also to think how to help the Georgia, because what we hear so far from our Western friends and partners is that to have a strategic patience, which is fine, but how far you can have the strategic patience. The strategic patience is not the policy. You need some sort of new framework to for the countries like Georgia, Ukraine, and some others. So I think that when Georgia now entering this what I would call irreversible path of Europeanization, country needs the European perspective, as it was mentioned, and because this perspective can actually boost the reforms which we already agree that this country really needs. And of course, we understand that Georgia is not a consolidated democracy right now, but if this country will have some sort of political compass, for the ordinary Georgians, because as I said, political elites, they support the Europeanization and membership in EU. But we should not forget that Russia is also trying to capitalizing, and they spread a lot of misinformation, especially among ordinary Georgians. So in order to have that, how to say, this fight against Russian propaganda successful, it will be very helpful if countries like Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, they would have a European perspective. When I said European perspective, we understand the local realities in EU, but what I would say, what would be a good thing is something like it was done in Bucharest Summit 2008, basically, when the member countries actually agreed that one day, whenever, they didn't say exactly when, but when there will be time, they will accept Ukraine and Georgia as a member of NATO. Something like that for Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, if there will be some sort of statement, that could be some sort of very encouraging for many Georgians, and that will also give a very good answer to Russian propaganda, because now some Georgians, they doubt that is there light in this tunnel, and if there will be this sort of kind of political compass or something similar like that, that could really help to propel the Georgia's European way. And there was something else, second question, yes, from, I forgot, about the EU, membership. I think in general, I think as you probably know about this decision, that this decision was made before the election. So by Georgian Dream, which probably was not a wise, because I understand why they did it, because they are always in the defend internally in Georgia that they are not pro-Russian, and in this internal struggle, they just decided to apply for 2024. It's kind of mystery why they still decided 24 and not, for instance, 27 or 28, because as we know, there will not be so many good opportunities for Georgia at this stage. But but at the same time, we have to agree with the position of the government that there's also another reality, that if Georgia will never will put its application forward, I don't think that there will be time when somebody from Brussels or from Paris or from other member states capital will call Georgia and will tell, okay, now guys, you are ready and you can apply for this membership. Of course, this is a huge responsibility when you apply, and what Georgia needs is that, and I'm not sure about that part, that if we have done proper work in European capitals, that because for us it really matters what will be the reaction from EU, what will be the reaction from EU institutions, EU capitals, and member states, and I'm not sure if that preparatory work was done well from Georgian side. And of course, I know that this is not only job of the government, this is also job of civil society, academia, probably Georgian media as well. We have to contribute because this is our, I would say, kind of common idea, and we need to think how to make this contribution, the creative contribution to this cause.
And just linked to that, what do you think about this, initiative from Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova? This Troika idea that would, separate them from the other countries, because these three are obviously, associate members, of the association agreement. Do you think this has does it have legs? I mean, what sort of enthusiasm is there from the EU to dealing with the three of them separately to the other three countries? I mean, I haven't seen a huge amount of enthusiasm for many member states, but I may be missing something.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, there was not so much enthusiasm about this Troika idea, but we should be also realistic. I understand the current realities in EU. They don't want to split the Eastern Partnership, which is which is understandable for EU side. But at the same time, we have three countries who really want to achieve more with the EU. I think in this case, what we need to do is that, for instance, for countries like Georgia, since independence, our role model was Baltic states, especially countries like Lithuania and Estonia, because it was a good model for us when three countries, small countries, post-Soviet countries, actually managed to cooperate together. They had a common goals. Of course, all Georgians think that Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians, they were friends all the time, and they don't even joke about each other, which is probably not true. But that was a good model, and I think that it's still relevant for us, this role model. So that's why Georgia is trying to somehow disassociate itself last decade from South Caucasus as a region, and to associate more towards Black Sea, and to have more attachment towards Ukraine and Moldova, because geographically we are a little bit far from Europe, and that's always was historically weakest part of the Georgian geopolitics. But I think this trio idea, if there will be more institutionalization, and as you know, there was already, the parliaments of the three countries agreed that they will have this parliamentary assembly, and if there will be more coordination, something like along this, like Visegrad group or some other, there could be good model, like Baltic states, how they actually entered this, and or Visegrad kind of cooperation. And sooner or later, of course, these countries need to deliver the reforms, and that's very important. But sooner or later, also EU also has to realize that they also need to invest a little bit how to build up this new region, and to support this regionalization, which is already happening. Because I don't believe that in EFE countries we have some countries who has some aspiration towards the EU, some they don't. So we should not be waiting for other countries, or for instance democratization of another country, and because of that the country who aspires for more EU integration, they should not be punished. So this is, I'm talking here about this so-called South Caucasus basket, where actually EU puts Georgia inadvertently or advertently, we don't know that. But if you look to this, like programs and everything, I think we really need to change there, including in European Parliament, in some other places where we have, of course, we are not against to have a South Caucasus group, but there could be also friendship group with Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, with associated countries. So we have to be very, how to say, very open about all kinds of scenarios and not to alienate anybody, because that's very important. But at the end of the day, we should understand that we need to cooperation among the EAP countries. But at the same time, there should be different kind of parallel structures where you can engage with these countries.
Thank you. I'm now going to give the floor to my colleague, Yana Maisoradze, who has a question. I am going to come back to you as well, Marina, to allow you to comment on some of the things Kornely just said, but now I'll give the floor to Yana, if my colleague can unmute her.
Thank you. Thank you to the speakers for the interesting insights. And my question is the following: considering the effectiveness of the joint transatlantic efforts led by EU in the mediation process, will the common approach continue towards Georgia from EU and US during the implementation process of the agreement? And if so, what would be the next steps in this process? Is this also a transatlantic success story? Thank you.
Thank you, Yana. So I'll give the floor to you now, Marina, to respond.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, I think it's a transatlantic success because EU and US are so united, natural partners. So I think our aspirations and our wishes to the Georgian nation, to the Georgian people, to Georgian future are the same. So yes, I would say, and you saw it also on the ground, where Ambassador Hartswell cooperated so closely with US ambassadors. So yes, it's not only EU success, it's a transatlantic success, agree absolutely. And I'd also quickly like to reflect on some things that Kornely said. And Kornely, please call me Marina. First of all, the fatigue that Georgian people might get, trust me, there is a huge fatigue in Europe. Europe is tired of Ukraine, Georgia, and others. Europe is tired of paying, of providing assistance and not seeing results. So unfortunately, that is the situation. At the moment, Europe has more important questions: pandemic, Brexit, migration, terrorism. That's the agenda, digitalization, climate. That's the agenda in Europe. So the fact that Charles Michel took this initiative, it's a very, very big thing. So I do hope that maybe these things that are visible to Georgian people will give them more optimistic emotions. Charles Michel was in Tbilisi. He was talking to Georgian people. Visa facilitation, I see it as a success story. Even without membership, there are fields where we can cooperate much more closely. Let's take trade. Why not Georgia and some other Eastern Partnership countries became partners to EU, like we have Norway, Switzerland, Iceland. So there are ways of much closer cooperation without membership. Because what I don't want, I see that very often these conversations about Eastern Partnership turn into conversations about enlargement. And I don't want the expectations to be too high and too unrealistic. I'm sorry for being so blunt and open, but Europe is not ready at the moment. And we, the Baltics, might push. You have other friends who might push, but it's a consensus decision. Also, South Caucasus. Yes, there is a South Caucasus delegation, but we do not meet as South Caucasus delegation. We meet with every respective country separately. So it's EU Georgia, EU Armenia, EU Azerbaijan. But yes, the umbrella, it's called South Caucasus delegation. And I know that we're running out of time, so I'd like to thank Amanda, thank Kornely. It was a real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to our future discussions.
Thank you, Marina. It was a real pleasure to have you as well. Kornely, one last word from you. What would be your advice to your leadership in the opposition, if you could give them a piece of advice, which I'm sure you do anyway?
Yeah, sure. I think my advice would be to opposition and generally to the government and to everybody actually, that we should really continue to this path towards Europeanization. This is our answer to the Russian aggression, because we are not a military power. We cannot cope with this military balance with Russia, but more Europeanization, more Europe, and more NATO in Georgia, I think that would be the proper answer, and more democracy, of course, this is very important. And also I agree with what Marina said, that Georgia needs how to manage this expectation, especially in terms of the EU and NATO. But at the same time, I also agree that we also need to do our homework, especially DCFTA and some other, like agreements which we already have, and also to have more, I would say, like sectoral integration in EU in short term, and then we will see in the end what will come out. But in reality, Georgia actually is working on that in terms of NATO, because Georgia, if you look realistically, Georgia is de facto member of NATO. It's contributing to peacekeeping operations. We sent our soldiers in Afghanistan, Iraq, and everywhere, of course, and it is just acting as a member. So I think it would be advisable to do the same in terms of the EU. And we know that Georgia is also very active in EU peacekeeping operations in Africa and some other places, but I think we need also to more tune our foreign policy towards EU and to have more cohesion with European foreign policy. And I think in that terms, we need to, we have a lot of things to work, and I'm sure the Georgian political elites will try to manage to work on that direction.
Thank you, Kornely, and a big thanks to you as well for joining us here today. I think we had a great conversation. I'm looking forward to having more conversations in the future with both of you on Georgia and on other issues related to the South Caucasus. I really hope that this agreement is implemented swiftly, that both let's say all the parties involved do what's right for the country, deliver to the Georgian people what they really deserve and what they're really committed to, and that we see Georgia pursue its European dream rapidly and without too many hurdles in the road. Thank you again for joining us today, and until the next time, have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.